This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Is unfortunately our final show of Super Bowl week, but we're going to go out on a high note, I think, by bringing on Annie Nader to talk about not just the typical Annie stuff. You know, the reason you come to listen to Annie talk on the show is because of player props. We'll get to those, of course, because it's Annie. We got to do that for sure. But also, we're talking all the weird, novelty, fun props you can bet as well. And these are for fun because I don't know if I have an edge in these, but they're fun. And Annie has dug into some numbers behind these, try to identify where we can find some value for this Sunday's game. So we're going to talk about both the traditional props and the novelty props with Annie to send you off into Super Bowl 59 on a high note. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research. Joined here, as mentioned, by Annie Nader. You can find her on X at anader33. You can check her out at FanDuel Research, where she is a writer for us. Annie, welcome on into the show. Happy Super Bowl week to you. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jim. Happy Super Bowl week. It's all coming to a crash this weekend. So it's even though I originally, like I think most people weren't exactly thrilled to have another Chiefs-Eagles matchup, I'm still very excited for the game. And at this point, I'm like, I don't know if I care as much, but
right. I've had like a pretty heavy ebb and flow of like, I like watching the homes. I'm excited about that. Then I was like, that's kind of boring. Same matchup. And now I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'm locked in, excited for it. And I'm excited for you because this is a pretty fun month for you. You had the NBA trade deadline yesterday. The Oscars are now officially less than 1 month away. So we'll get the Annie betting piece up on the Oscars later on, early March, but it's within a month at this point. So I feel like this is like your time to thrive throughout the entire calendar.
Yeah, definitely. The NBA got very interesting at the perfect time. So
yes, exactly. So hopefully get some NBA thoughts at some point here as well. But today we're talking NFL with Annie. We'll talk about, again, the traditional props, talk some touchdown bets, and then dig into halftime show, Anthem, Gatorade color, all the fun stuff you can bet, mostly in Canada. We'll talk about that on the show here today. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. We won't be daily in non-NFL season, but still have some shows around tentpole key events, Daytona 500, my Super Bowl is next week too, so we'll talk about that here on the show. So still a lot of reason to subscribe to Covering the Spread. And also you can find all the shows we've done throughout this week. Monday, traditional markets from me. Austin Swaim joined me Tuesday talking about key matchups and bets stemming from those. I went through some SGPs I like for this game on Wednesday. And then yesterday we had Dr. Ed Feng and Megan Payton on to break down their top player props for this game. All those shows up on the Covering the Spread podcast. Needs to go there, hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. Of course, we also do stream over on the YouTube page. We'll have some awesome NFL shows there too, so still plenty of content over there. FanDuel football betting, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you who have tuned in throughout the entire season. The FanDuel Kick of Destiny is back, and this time it's every Manning for himself. This Super Bowl, two legends will take the field in a sudden death field goal showdown. Peyton versus Eli, live from New Orleans. One kick to claim ultimate family bragging rights. Who will rise to the moment? Pick your winner now on the FanDuel app. If you back the right brother, you'll earn a share of $10 million in bonus bets. It's the FanDuel Kick of Destiny 3. Make your free pick, and don't forget to tune in to watch the showdown live doing Super Bowl 59 pregame show on Fox, 3 p.m. Eastern. May the best Manning win. FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino or 18 plus and present in DC. No purchase necessary. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Help in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Annie, Kick of Destiny thoughts. It's Peyton versus Eli. Peyton, of course, arch nemesis of Tom Brady. Eli, bigger arch nemesis of Tom Brady. So who are you picking? Kick of Destiny 3, Peyton versus Eli.
I think I'm gonna go with Eli. I feel like he's
Okay.
maybe stayed in better shape since retirement. But
I love that. Is this I like are you like using the Manning cast to like scout like who's been staying in better shape post retirement?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it might be Eli.
Okay, I like it. There's been a lot of Peyton propaganda, I would say, on this show throughout the week, because I've asked most people on the show who they're picking, and so good to get some Eli thoughts in there. He could use it, no
Yeah.
Hall of Fame for him last night, so picking Eli up and closing out with him for the final kick of destiny thought here on the show. Now, Andy, we'll talk props in a second, but first, it's going to stem a lot. Our thoughts on the prop markets will stem a lot from our view of this game overall. So when you look at this matchup, Chiefs versus Eagles, what's your top-down view of this game?
Yeah, I think for me at least, when it comes to the Super Bowl, there's a tendency to overthink everything because the betting markets open up early and we have to wait 2 weeks in between games. So there's a lot of mulling everything over, and I sort of find myself being talked into anything and everything. So these last few days, I've been just trying to regroup and go, okay, pretend the AFC Championship game just wrapped up. It's Eagles Chiefs in the Super Bowl. How do you see that game shaking out based on everything we've seen? And ultimately, I'm pretty in line with the market here. The total is set at 48.5, which I think is a pretty efficient mark. If I had to bet a side there, I would take the over, partly because, the Chiefs defense maybe isn't as nails as we thought it was earlier in the season. And I don't think we've seen the best of Jalen Hurts this postseason. He got banged up in the divisional round and has now had a couple of weeks to recover. So with him and Saquon, I think we can trust Philly's offense to an extent. And then on the other side, we have Patrick Mahomes, who is as close to matchup proof as you'll get right now. And I think that's like kind of what's most scary about Kansas City is it seems like every year they make it to this point of the season, yet it still feels like they haven't showed us their whole hand on offense. And I think that's especially true this season with all the injuries they had and the players they brought in as a result. Patrick Mahomes is someone who can execute a play that makes like Juju Smith-Schuster or DeAndre Hopkins look like they're in their prime. And maybe we haven't seen all the Xavier Worthy trick plays, and maybe Hollywood Brown can finally connect on one of those long targets. Like those are all real possibilities here with the Chiefs offense. So I'm of the mindset where I'm not going to bet against the Chiefs unless I'm getting enticing underdog odds to do so. And I don't really think that's the case here with the Eagles, even if, on paper, maybe in models, they're looked at as the better team.
Yeah. The Hollywood Brown thing you were mentioning, he is 0 for 6 on deep balls so far this year. That's not going to stick for Mahomes. Mahomes is a good deep ball passer, so at some point they will connect. I would love for it to be this weekend. Like I used to when we were talking before, I would talk about, Mahomes can make like these straight free agents look good. Like they were fine when they had like Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster as their top pass catchers. But now that's no longer accurate because Juju's back as being like a contributor. So we've had a whole trip with these guys, but the overriding theme is Patrick Mahomes is good. I understand where it coming from there, but the lean for Annie was towards the over 48.5 at -110. Now we'll talk about the weird props too. But Annie, if I have you on the show, I feel the need to ask you about traditional props because you're very good at traditional props. So when you look at the more normal props for this game, where are you seeing value at FanDuel?
Yeah, let's go off what you just said. I'm glad you mentioned Hollywood Brown because I want to check out his yardage prop. His baseline is set at 40.5 right now. I'm also going to be interested in some of his alt lines. As you mentioned, those deep targets that they just haven't been able to connect on yet. I mean, Brown made his Chiefs debut in week 16 coming off that shoulder injury. Through 4 games, he's posted 45, 46, 0, and 35 yards. So really nothing special there. But his role has been super encouraging. He's seen a team-high 32.2% air yard share since he's been back. And that was even with running less than 50% of the routes in those first 2 games back. This postseason, he's run 63% of the routes, which is the 3rd most on the team. And he's drawn a massive 40.7% air yard share. And up until this point, as you mentioned, those air yards have been more or less unrealized. But Mahomes has been looking for him in the deep throws, and now they get to play a game indoors. I think they'll finally connect on a few of those downfield shots this weekend. So I'm pretty high on him in Super Bowl.
I think that it's also encouraging too with Hollywood Brown that like, let's say Vic Fangio's like, umbrella style defense where he doesn't want you to beat him deep. They can still pepper Hollywood Brown underneath. They showed that in the Bills game where he was getting a lot of underneath targets and stuff like that. So even if the deep shot isn't there, I think there's still a path to this bet hitting. So you kind of have like 2 paths to a win, which is kind of what I want in a market like this. Over 40.5 -110. I think that helps. Like you could get it on one throw, hypothetically, but you have multiple outs to winning this bet, I think.
Exactly. And I was checking out earlier this week his longest reception, because that just, when you see those air yards go, right, oh, that seems like the way to go. But ultimately, I think for those reasons, the Eagles are great at stopping the long pass. But so with targeting Brown here, it's like he can get peppered. Mm-hmm. He can get a long shot. The odds are also just better. Like if you look at his alt lines, him to get 60 plus, I think is sitting at plus 230 right now, versus I believe him to record a 20-yard reception is at even money. So I'd almost rather just like shoot for 50 plus, 60 plus at plus odds there, and also have the ability to have this come in different ways.
And I think the thought process there is good too, where you have this assumption that he is going to eventually hit in a long ball. There are multiple routes to betting that. So I like the thought you kind of went through there, where you were exploring the markets, finding the best route. And I agree that the yardage one's better way for Hollywood Brown. Any other traditional props you like for this game?
Yeah, speaking of longest reception, I like Travis Kelce over 19.5 yards on that one. I think it was at minus 110. Now it's minus 113. So Kelce's recorded at least one 20-yard reception in 55% of his games this season. That's a tad up from like the 52-ish, 53% implied probability on these odds. So not much of a difference there. However, I'm much more interested in what he's done in the playoffs, since that's when the Chiefs are unleashing him at this point in his career. And he's logged a 20-yard reception in 6 of his last 7 playoff games. That includes his last 3 straight Super Bowl appearances. And he caught multiple 20-yard passes in the Super Bowl against the Eagles a couple years ago. So I like what he's done in his playoff history. And I also like betting on him in this market specifically, because a big Kelce play does wonders for the Chiefs, and they know that. It always seems like there's a point in the game where, maybe he hasn't been involved much, and all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes decides Travis is going to get us across midfield. And those plays always give the Chiefs such an energy burst. All of a sudden it feels like it's inevitable that they're going to score on that drive. Those plays are huge for him. So I like Travis to do it again this weekend.
Yeah, 19.5, the number there for Kelce. Over is minus 113. And again, multiple routes to get in there. He does get some deep targets, which I think is encouraging too. But like he showed against Texans, yards up to the catch, still in play for him, despite the fact he is 97 years old. He can still weave his way through traffic. Linebackers, the Eagles banged up with no Nakobe Dean, could present some chances there for Kelce. So over 19.5, minus 113, where Annie is turning there. What about touchdown bets? Any of those standing out as being values for you in this game?
Yeah, I like Dallas Goedert at, I believe it's at plus 310 right now, which I think is a pretty good number for him. If we look at a 6-game sample where Goedert, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown all played, Goedert earned a 21.4% red zone target share and a 25% end zone target share, only to be outdone by A.J. Brown. Those are pretty good shares considering these odds. They're a lot better shares than Devontae Smith. And Jalen Hurts has been really relying on him during the playoffs, and the Chiefs, they've not been great against tight ends this season. They've given up the highest target rate to that position. And just looking at the odds, the touchdown odds for this game, like, I don't know that he should be that far off from Devontae Smith. Like, Devontae Smith will get peppered for more targets, perhaps, but Dallas Goedert gets that work down by the goal line. And the difference here in odds is, I think, perhaps a little off. So I think plus 310, given all of his red zone shares, that's a pretty good mark.
Yeah, if you look at the 6 games they played together, Goddard actually has the overall target share edge too. He's at 23% versus Smith at 21%, 24% red zone target share for Goddard versus 12% for Smith. So sure, Smith may have better odds of like catching a long ball, but that shouldn't be enough where you can explain the gap between Smith at plus 230 and Goddard at plus 310. So if you're buying into like the Eagles passing game, I think that Goddard probably is the best avenue. AJ Brown plus 180, given the volume, that's also kind of tough for me. I think that of the big 3 for them in the passing game, Goddard probably is the best route for doing so.
Yeah, and if you just look at like the longer shot touchdown odds here, he's kind of the only one that I have interest in. I mean, Noah Gray might get one, but I can't even get there at plus 500. So
yeah, Noah Gray ran 3 routes in the conference championship. I have an abhorrent amount of Noah Gray dynasty shares. I will hype him up more than anyone else on this planet. I can't get there either. So I fully am on board with you that if you're looking at a somewhat longer shot for an anytime touchdown, Goddard does stand out there. So Dallas Goedert touchdown plus 310. Looking at the Travis Kelce long reception over 19.5 minus 113, and also buying into Hollywood Brown over 40.5 yards. Checking out all markets for Brown as well. Now, let's talk about the fun props, Annie. And most of these are available to bet only in Canada. So disclaimer on that, but they're fun to discuss. And that's the key. They're fun. So let's have some fun and talk about these markets. Starting things off with the national anthem. Jean-Baptiste will sing this one. Any thoughts on markets for the national anthem this week, Annie?
Yeah, I like over on the national anthem length. I believe it's sitting at 122 and a half seconds here. And yeah, so there's been some movement here. Last night, this line was set at 120 and a half seconds, which is a mark that has been cleared in 8 of the last 12 Super Bowls. But 2 of those 8 clocked in at 121 seconds exactly. So now with this updated line, we're looking at a 50-50 hit rate in that 12-year span. But the important thing to note here is that the clock starts when the first note or instrument is played. And Jean-Baptiste is an instruments guy. He's minus 500 to perform with the piano. He also, I was looking on YouTube, he's done a rendition with the guitar before, like just for like YouTube. I don't know what that was for. So like, I don't think he's just going to go take the mic and go for it. Like I would be shocked if there wasn't an instrument involved, which is great news for the over. So when we look at the last 12 years, 2 performers have played with the guitar. One, Lady Gaga, had someone else playing the piano beside her, and then 1 performer played the piano themselves. Those 4 national anthems with instruments clocked in at 121, 136, 142, and 156 seconds. Alicia Keys is the only performer who sat at the piano, and she really milked it at 156 seconds. So I think we'll see a similar thing with Jean-Baptiste here, where we could get like 15 to 20 seconds of piano before he even starts to sing. So I really like the over. I think it's my favorite bet in this novelty market.
Are you grinding tape on the national anthem? Are you just out here like watching YouTube videos of Jean-Baptiste? I love it.
A little, yeah. I was going through all of it yesterday because there's been some like they'll go from Lady Gaga to someone I've never heard of.
Right.
So it was interesting to go back through memory lane on all those. But yeah, I grinded a little tape, and I think the over's the move.
Annie, ball knower, singing knower. I don't know. Let's find a term, an equivalent term for that too. But Annie is on the Jean-Baptiste over 122 and a half minus 110. Again, primarily available in Canada. I am most excited for the halftime show, which is Kendrick Lamar. I'm very excited about that. Couple different markets you can bet for that. Any of those showing value for you, Annie?
Yeah, I like the celebrity guest to appear on stage market. So we already know that SZA will be joining Kendrick Lamar for the halftime show. I wouldn't be totally shocked if that's it and he decides to not bring out any other surprise guests, which is obviously an important thing to keep in mind here. But I do think there are a couple of slam dunk options in the event that he does bring out guests. The first being Baby Keem. That's Kendrick's actual cousin. They run a company together. They have that song Family Ties together, which Kendrick's not performing Family Ties without Baby Keem. He might just not do that song, but I think if he is bringing out guests, I'd be very surprised if Baby Keem wasn't there with him. But then again, these minus 142 odds like might be operating too heavily on the assumption that there will be a surprise performer besides SZA. So in that case, I think my favorite bet here is J-Rock at plus 205. They have many songs together, the main and most famous one being Money Trees. I hope he performs Money Trees. I'd be surprised if he didn't. And J-Rock obviously has a verse on that song. They have a few other options for different songs. So there's multiple routes here to J-Rock getting on stage with Kendrick. And he also made some surprise appearances at Kendrick's show this past summer to perform Money Trees. So I have a feeling if there are in fact guests, he'll be there, which makes this a decent target at better plus 205 odds.
I love it. I mostly because I love J-Rock. Not just Money Trees, but also on the Black Panther soundtrack. They did King's Dead together, which is one of my favorite songs. I like J-Rock. This is my it's just the two of us talking, right? No one else listening. I have very bad music taste, and J-Rock used to be on the Strange Music label, and I'm a big Tech 9 fan, so I like J-Rock from back in those days, and I've carried that fondness. So if J-Rock appears on stage, I will be excited for your bet. Sure, that's fine. But primarily, the fanboy in me will probably lose his mind, and I'll be unbearable for the next 5 to 10 minutes at least. All
right, so now I'm really hoping J-Rock. I didn't realize you were such a J-Rock fan. But yeah, you mentioned King's Dead, so Future's on that song too.
Yeah.
And Future also has that with Kendrick. But
Future sucks on King's Dead. I'm not gonna lie. He is on that song. He sucks. I hate his verse. I hope he is not there. He ruins the song. So that's my mini soapbox there.
I don't really think when I first opened this, I was like, oh, Future, he has to do that. And then I looked through the songs and I was like, I actually don't know if that will make the cut.
There was like a market at one point of the number of diss tracks Kendrick would do, and like that would obviously count. I think it was set at like 2.5, which would imply like, I mean, I like Euphoria more than Not Like but like, you know, I'm just, again, I have bad music opinions. So, but Andy does like J-Rock, plus 205 to appear on stage with Kendrick, but also some interesting Baby Keem, minus 142 there. Let's finish up with the Gatorade color. And Annie, when I opened this market, I was expecting to be like the way it typically is, where it's like, okay, there's no major consensus. But for whatever reason, steam has come in on yellow/lime or green. It was minus 230 this morning, now back out to minus 200. So when you look at this market, Annie, what are you seeing?
Yeah, we have Lane Johnson to thank for that yellow, lime, green movement, because he went on a podcast a few years ago. I think it must have like gotten recirculated on the internet yesterday. He went on a podcast a few years ago during the Eagles' last Super Bowl appearance and said that, you know, they always have yellow Gatorade. It's never not yellow. Now, that was 2 years ago. It could have changed. Granted, in the NFC Championship, they did pour yellow Gatorade on Nick Sirianni. So it does seem like if the Eagles do, in fact, win the Super Bowl, it's going to be yellow. But at the same time, part of me is just like, if all things are even here, there's 6 flavors. That's about a 16% chance. That translates to like roughly 500 plus 500 odds. So I see value in orange through water/clear, although water/clear would not be a fun bet. And also, like, if the Chiefs win, like, who knows what they do there? They have done purple for 2 straight years, so they could, if they cap off a three-peat, ride with purple again. Although in Mahomes' first Super Bowl win, the Gatorade color was orange. So I don't mind the idea of just like, if you want to bet on the Gatorade color here, just going with the ones that are above plus 500, and you can kind of consider them a value if you just want to go. They all have an equal shot, although that Eagles thing did throw it off a little bit.
I gave a very tough assignment to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for the thumbnail of this show. I was like, hey, can you get like Kendrick on there and then also like Andy Reid Gatorade as like the two, like, you know, usually it's 2 players. But the cover is Andy Reid getting dumped with orange Gatorade, which, like you said, was from the Super Bowl for the first one. That's 11-1. So like you said, it's a volatile market. We don't really know what's going to go on here. So why not take a long shot? I think that makes sense. So I would lean towards orange personally at 11-1. I think that's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a hedge out of my Eagles money line too, which is good. But I do think that makes sense. And again, I appreciate the commitment to the grind of looking back at what they've done in past Super Bowls.
Yeah, now I'm all aboard on orange. If the thumbnail's orange, that seems like a good sign.
Okay. This is all, if this does hit, we have to give thanks to Justin for the thumbnail. I think that we can give him full credit for that. But full credit to Annie for the research on the Anthem halftime show stuff. I got to talk Tech 9, which is weird. And then Gatorade color as well. What better way to conclude the NFL season here on Covering the Spread? That is all that we have here for today and this week. Again, more NFL thoughts coming up throughout the offseason here on the show. But Annie, just wanted to thank you for joining us throughout the year. A bunch of times talking some player props. Had a blast talking to that. Looking forward to talking to you again in the future, whether it be NBA, maybe some Oscar stuff. Should be a lot of fun, but appreciate it as always. And good luck to you and enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yeah, thanks for a great season, Jim.
You can find Annie on X at Nader33. Check out her work at FanDuel.com/research. I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes, and you can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. As mentioned, big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things, the thumbnails with the orange Gatorade. Hopefully that transpires as well. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in throughout this season for the NFL version of Covering the Spread. I hope you all go out on a high note with the Super Bowl. We'll talk to you once again. I'm going to talk to you on the podcast side of things next week, talking Daytona 500, but also more NFL thoughts throughout the offseason as well. We'll talk to all of you in the very near future. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.